Lists of classics often fail for one simple reason. They feel like homework, not like a clear next step. This video fixes that by using 10 life skill slots instead of a vague ranking. Each slot is a reason to read one book at least once. Think of it like building cultural literacy, the same way you build a toolkit. One tool for empathy, one tool for political language, one tool for love and social comedy. You do not need to read these in any special order. You also do not need to read them all this year. Start with the slot that matches what you want right now. A quick note on editions and translations. For older works, the reading experience can change with the translation or the introduction. If an introduction starts to explain the whole story, skip it until after you finish. For every pick, I will give you the clean reason it earns a place, what it trains in you as a reader, and the easiest way to approach it without spoilers. At the end, I will give a few strong alternatives if you prefer shorter books, modern voices, or nonfiction. If you remember one rule from this list, it is this: choose for fit, not for status. The right first classic makes the rest easier. To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee. A quiet Southern courtroom novel with warm everyday scenes told in plain language that makes big moral ideas feel close and readable. Life skill slot. Empathy with structure. This book is famous because it lets you practice seeing a community from multiple angles without turning into a lecture. The writing is clear and the chapters move quickly. That makes it a good first classic if you worry about density. Read it for how it handles fairness, fear, and social pressure. Notice how ordinary conversations reveal what people believe they are owed. You can also treat it as a study in point of view. The narration keeps you grounded in the lived texture of a place. That is why it is often taught. It trains the reader to listen before judging. Practical approach. Take it in small daily chunks. Stop after each chapter and name one small moment that changes how you see the situation. If you want more context, look up the publication year after you finish. That keeps the reading experience clean. This is not about memorizing quotes, it is about practicing humane attention. 1984, George Orwell. A bleak political fiction novel set in a tightly controlled society, written in sharp, simple sentences that feel urgent and claustrophobic without being hard to follow. Life skill slot. Language awareness. This book earns its place because it shows how words can be used to shrink reality. People reference it constantly, but reading it once gives you a more precise mental model for propaganda, surveillance, and self-censorship. The key reading move is to watch the vocabulary. Pay attention to slogans and official phrases. Notice how repetition changes what seems normal. Also notice how the setting limits private life. The book is not just about politics. It is about the human need for a stable inner world. Practical approach. Do not try to speed read it. Read a few chapters at a time, then pause. Let the ideas settle. If you read on audio, choose a narrator with a steady tone. The clarity matters more than performance. After you finish, you will understand why people use the word Orwellian, and you will be able to use it accurately. Pride and Prejudice. Jane Austen. A witty social comedy set among families and dinner rooms, written with precise observations that reward attention while staying light and surprisingly fast. Life skill slot. Social intelligence. This book teaches how status, money, and first impressions shape decisions. It is also a masterclass in dialogue. People say more than they mean. Politeness becomes a mask. Beginner approach. Do not worry about catching every historical detail. Focus on how conversations work. Notice who interrupts, who flatters, and who stays quiet. The humor is not loud. It is steady and sharp. Once you tune in, the pages move quickly. What you gain? You get a vocabulary for manners and misreadings. You also get cultural reference points that show up in modern romances and films. If you want a smoother entry, read a short note on Regency England after you finish the first third. Keep it minimal. Read this once and you will recognize its DNA in countless stories about love, pride, and the cost of judging too early. The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald. A short lyrical novel set in the Jazz Age near New York, told in polished scenes that feel like snapshots of glamour and quiet unease. Life skill slot. Reading subtext. This is a compact book that teaches you to notice what a narrator chooses to admire and what they choose to excuse. The plot is less important than the atmosphere. The sentences are crafted, the images stick. How to read it. Go slowly enough to hear the rhythm, but not so slowly that you lose the mood. Mark passages that describe rooms, parties, and light. Those details carry meaning. They show the gap between appearance and reality, why it belongs on a foundation list. It is one of the cleanest entry points into American modernism. It is also one of the most referenced books in school and culture. If you have avoided it because you think it is only about rich people, read it as a book about desire and self-invention. You can finish it in a weekend and come away with a sharper sense for how style can carry an argument. Crime and Punishment. Fyodor Dostoevsky, a psychological novel set in a tense urban atmosphere, written in intense scenes and inner debates that feel like a moral pressure chamber. Life skill slot. Ethical self-interrogation. This book earns its status because it dramatizes what it feels like when ideas collide with conscience. It is longer than most on this list, but it is not slow when you read it as a sequence of confrontations and reflections. Beginner approach. Choose a modern translation with clear language. Read one chapter per sitting. The momentum comes from the shifting thoughts, not from action. Keep a simple note of the main question each section raises. That is enough. You do not need to track every name perfectly. What you gain. You get a deep template for understanding rationalization. You see how pride can masquerade as philosophy. You also see compassion working as a force, not as sentiment. If you want a lighter entry into Russian classics, start elsewhere and return later. If you want the full mental workout, this is the pick. Read it once and you will recognize its influence on modern crime stories, therapy language, and the way we talk about guilt. The Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger. A first-person coming-of-age novel set over a few restless days in a city, written in direct conversational language that feels immediate and intimate. Life skill slot. Recognizing emotional defense. This book matters because it captures how cynicism can hide grief, fear, and loneliness. It is also a key reference point for modern voice-driven fiction. Many narrators borrow its closeness. How to read it well. Treat the voice as the main event. Notice when the narrator repeats phrases. Notice when the tone shifts from jokes to blunt honesty. You do not have to agree with the attitudes. You only need to observe what the voice is trying to protect. Why it belongs in cultural literacy. People mention this book when they talk about teenage alienation, authenticity, and the fear of growing up. Reading it once helps you separate the myth from the actual text. Practical approach. Read it quickly over a few sittings. The rhythm works best that way. Then let it sit for a day. The reward is a clearer understanding of how a narrative voice can tell the truth while pretending it is only venting. Beloved, Toni Morrison. A literary novel with poetic language and shifting perspectives, set in the aftermath of American slavery and written to feel haunting, intimate, and emotionally exacting. Life skill slot. Historical empathy with artistry. This book earns its place because it makes history feel personal without turning pain into spectacle. The prose can be dense at first. That is intentional. It asks you to slow down and read for meaning, not just for events. Beginner approach. Read small sections. If a passage feels hard, read it twice. The second pass often clarifies the images. Keep your focus on feeling and voice. Morrison uses repetition and echo to show how memory works. Cultural literacy value. This is one of the most significant American novels of the late 20th century. It is widely discussed in literature classes and in conversations about how art can carry trauma. Practical tip. After each reading session, summarize the emotional temperature in one sentence. That helps you track the movement without chasing details. You do not read this for comfort. You read it to expand what serious fiction can do and to gain a deeper respect for language as a tool of witness. The Stranger, Albert Camus. A short philosophical novel set in bright coastal heat, written in clean, spare sentences that feel detached, observant, and unsettling in a very controlled way. Life skill slot. Existential clarity. This book belongs on the list because it gives you a direct encounter with absurdism without requiring academic background. The style is the lesson. The plainness forces you to ask what meaning comes from and what society expects from emotion. How to approach it. Read it in 1 or 2 sittings. The compact form matters. Do not over-annotate. Let the simplicity do its work. Then, after you finish, read a short summary of Camus and the idea of the absurd. That timing keeps you from reading with a pre-made interpretation. Cultural literacy value. References to this book show up in philosophy, film, and modern fiction. It is often used as a gateway to French literature. If you want an alternative with a similar mood, look at Kafka later. For a first step, this is clearer. The reward is a sharper sense for tone and stance, and a better ability to read a narrator who refuses to perform feelings for the reader. The Diary of a Young Girl, Anne Frank. A real diary written in hiding during wartime Europe, intimate and reflective in tone, grounded in daily routines and private thoughts under severe external threat. Life skill slot. Humanizing history. This book is not a textbook. It is a direct voice that turns a huge event into a lived interior world. That is why it remains one of the most assigned and most translated works of the 20th century. Edition note. Different publications exist because the diary had drafts, and because editors shaped what was released. If you see terms like definitive or critical, it usually means more complete material and more context. For a first read, choose a widely used edition with clear notes, but do not get lost in footnotes. How to read it. Read a few entries at a time. Treat it as a relationship with a voice, not as a plot. Notice the humor, the frustrations, and the desire for normal life. After you finish, a short historical overview of the period will land more strongly because you now have a human anchor. This is foundational cultural literacy because it trains you to remember that history is made of ordinary days and that language can preserve dignity in extreme conditions. The Odyssey, Homer, an ancient epic journey poem set across seas and islands told in episodic adventures with mythic imagery that feels larger than life while staying surprisingly readable in good translation. Life skill slot, myth literacy. This is the backbone of Western storytelling references. Reading it once gives you a map for countless later books, films, and idioms. You do not need to treat it as sacred. Treat it as a set of story patterns that keep returning. Translation note. Different versions read very differently. Some are plain and fast. Some are formal and musical. If you are new, pick a modern readable translation. The goal is momentum and comprehension. Also consider the format. Audio works well because the work began as oral storytelling. How to approach it without intimidation. Read one episode at a time. Each section is a self-contained test of character and endurance. Keep a simple list of recurring themes like hospitality, pride, and cleverness. That is enough. The payoff is cultural fluency. You will recognize references instantly, and you will understand why journey stories still use this structure as a foundation. How to use this list without turning it into a burden. Pick one slot for the next month, not 10 slots for your whole life. If you want the easiest entry, choose the shortest books first. The Great Gatsby, The Stranger, and The Catcher in the Rye can all be finished quickly, and they teach very different reading muscles. If you prefer modern language, you can keep the same life skill idea and swap titles later. For political language, you might choose a recent dystopia. For social comedy, you might choose a contemporary romance with sharp dialogue. The goal is not to worship a canon. The goal is to build shared reference points that help you understand other books and conversations. A practical reading plan. Alternate one heavy pick with one lighter pick. Pair a long psychological novel with a short style-driven novel. Pair a myth with a diary. That balance keeps momentum. Also remember that rereading counts as cultural literacy too. If a book from school did not land, reading it later can feel completely different because you bring more life experience. These 10 are popular in the United States for a reason. They sell consistently. They show up in classrooms. They echo across media. Read one that fits you now, and the rest of the list becomes an open door instead of a test.